I think we're going to start. So welcome everybody here in the room and those who are virtually joining us tonight. So this is the, might not be in the evening for the other people who are joining us. So this is the special interest group for worker productivity. And so this is one of the first six, so welcome. And so on this slide, you see all the members of our SIG. Unfortunately, not everybody was able to join us for this overact. But the people in red will be here, and they will also be helping or presenting or helping facilitating some of our activities. So you probably have met already Kathy sitting in front. She's been doing a lot today. Dorcas and Annelies Bode in front of you as well. Andre sitting on that table, and Casper here. So we all take part in this presentation. And I just, before we go to the background, a brief sort of overview of what we're going to do. So I'll give a bit of an introduction of what we've been doing the last couple of years. And then we have different sections looking at one very specific measure of presenteeism, the WLQ25, and looking at the systematic review that has been performed, some activities around conflict validity, and some activities around trial discrimination, and then wrap up that conclusion. So when we talk about worker productivity, what do we mean? Thinking about presenteeism, and some of you may have already heard about that term. And there's different ways of describing it. One is the productivity loss during paid work due to ill health. And how can we measure that? So we could easily measure it by multi-item measures. So these are a number of items in the questionnaire. Sometimes the score is added up, or there's a composite scores that leads to total scores for different sub-skill scores. We can also measure presenteeism using a global measure, as you see below. So this is often a visual analog scale. You see often used in studies for pain as well, and it just measures how well presenteeism is or not. So those are the two presenteeism skills we've been focusing on in the last couple of years. So the work we've been doing is literally over the last decade. So we started off thinking, what do we want to do with presenteeism? How are we going to measure it? What measures are already available? And how well are they presented and scored when we start to use the OMRED filter? So we've done a lot of surveys, we presented, had a lot of 6 interactive working groups, plenary sessions at previous OMRECs to discuss our work and selected some of the measures forward. We did a number of studies ourselves looking at some of these measures. And a couple of years ago in OMREC 11, 2 of these measures, the work productivity and activity impairment scale and the RA specific work productivity service scale, they were already passed by the filter, and that was the previous filter in OMREC. So it's still.
You need to advance it?
Yeah.
Can we just check with the people online if they can hear us okay?
And people online hear us and see the slides as well. It's just
give us
okay with that.
Ying Sun, can you hear us? Can you ask for Ying Sun?
Ying Sun, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. So let's stand on this side. So we still have 4 measures left. 2 are multi-item measures, the WALS, and the other one is the WLQ25, which we're going to discuss in more detail today. The other are global measures, which is the workability index and the quantity and quality method. So there's a lot of work to do in those 3 remaining ones. What we had as a challenge, so normally, you know, we start now with the description of the domain, and then you start with the selection of the instruments. Because we already started looking at the instruments quite a while ago, we had to then define the domain. So this is what we came up with. So they had to cover some of the presenteeism skills we were already aware of. So that was a bit of a challenge for our group. compared to some of the other groups. When we start thinking about the presenteeism and what kind of concept they use, there's different concepts. So in the WPAI, they use the term productivity. But what does productivity mean from the perspective of the patient? That might be something very different than from the perspective of the employer. So productivity from the perspective of the patient might be how productive have you been, are you feeling good, have you been able to do some of your work. From the perspective of the employer, it might be more about how much was produced during the day, how much income did the company get. So this is one term, but there's many other terms when we look at the concept. They all have slightly different meanings, as we know, and even there may be differences between countries like this. With work productivity, you also have to take into account a number of different factors related to personal factors or environmental factors, which may have an impact on the outcome itself. So if you take, for example, the nature of jobs, how high the work demands might be, this could have an impact on presenteeism. So on your left-hand side, you see somebody with high job demands. So if that person is not able to come into work just because of high job demands, because of ill health, absenteeism might be quite high compared to presenteeism. Somebody with some low job demands, presenteeism might be much higher compared to absenteeism. So all these factors play a role as well. So that's something to consider. So the next part will be presented by Dorcas Kasper and Andre, and where we go in a bit more detail about one of his presentation.
Yes, thank you for this excellent introduction. So I hope it's now a bit more clear to you what the group has been doing, what our goals are. And we're going to focus now on this specific instrument, this program. So again, we have this ability of productivity, so what's kind of the thing we want to measure in terms of presenteeism, and also we have this multi-item or single-item global measures, and now we're going to be working in the top right corner. So we're going to look at the WL25, it is a measure of productivity, and it's a multi-item measure. And the goal for us as a group that we're working on is basically we want to review all the evidence of this WLQ25 instrument across the key measurement properties as defined by OMART, and eventually, hopefully, see that this instrument also passes filter. And just a small note is that the review is part of a larger project in which several different measures will be tested, but for now we're focusing on this one. And important is, of course, is what's the intended use of this instrument. So how do we want to, what kind of applications do we want to test it? Now we want to basically see if this instrument is fit for use in a population, any kind of rheumatic or musculoskeletal disease, broad. In terms of using trials, we are looking at trials looking at any pharmacological or non-pharmacological intervention compared against any other pharmacological or non-pharmacological intervention. It can also be placebo or usual care, and can also even be used in the context of observation studies. This is the setting where we want to see if this instrument is does it fit the findings. With that being said, now we move on to a bit more information about this question. I'll Dorcas, please take the stage and guide us through it.
Great. So the WLQ questionnaire, which you have in front of you on your table, was developed by Deborah Lerner and Ben Amick, and it was first released in 1998. And I just draw your attention to the Tufts Medical Center website down in the corner, where they have quite an extensive description, and that's where the copyright is held there, and you need to go through that to get a license to use. So the WLQ is set up to measure both the degree to which employed individuals are experiencing limitations on the job due to their health problems. So really trying to capture that presenteeism. It's also designed to measure sort of a health productivity loss. It asks respondents to rate their level or difficulty on their ability to perform specific job demands. So the developers have said that in choosing the job demands that would go into the WLQ questionnaire, they had 4 defining characteristics. First, those job demands have to occur across a variety of jobs so that the instrument would fit across a variety of jobs. That many different physical or emotional health problems could interfere with the performance of those job demands. So to be sensitive to a health condition. These job demands had to be considered important to the job from the worker's perspective, and that problems performing them would be related to a productivity loss. So the WLQ covers 4 subskills in the darker blue boxes: physical demand, time management, mental interpersonal, and output demands. And you can see the number of job demands or items in each of those. And then it's brought together to a special weighted score that we call the WLQ index. So what we'd like you to do is to just give a try of the WLQ questionnaire. And you have some in front of you. There may not be enough for everybody, but you can maybe split it in half and you try one part, some try another. And just to answer the questions and to get familiar with what the questionnaire looks and feels like. For those online, I think we'll go back to this slide. But the questions that we want to ask, in general, like just how is this fitting with our people? But as you're going through this, think about what domains, concepts, maybe an instrument should we be using to evaluate things like construct? What would convince you that this is a good instrument of worker productivity? What comparisons that you go through do you think we should make sure that this is a good question? And we'll get back to that later in our discussion, but just type that in the back of your mind as you're working on the questionnaire. So we thought we'd give you 5 minutes now to just dig in and fill out the questionnaire yourselves and all that.
Oh, I did it at the same time, sorry.
There. So for those online, just have a look at these items and see what you think. Oh, where do we start with this? Yeah. Sure.
Thanks.
Also.
Yes. So this is an easy one, so they did so you
Yeah, and then we can also. Yeah, I can ask her. Yeah, please. 3 days.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I'm thinking of all the things that we could Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go back.
So I'll draw you back and introduce our other fellow, Andre, who's going to lead us into the next parts of our discussion.
We'll talk about the methodology of our systematic review. Our group, we were privileged that we have two fellows, so we could stick to the methodological principle of blinding. So we could research, perform research with the help of the screening and also the appraisal of the papers. It was done separately, and also the data extraction. We used the software for screening. We could add a lot of labels, and the interesting thing is that we made the search involving all four instruments. So the next steps of the project are already advanced. All the papers were included in the SOM table. We found 18 papers. In the critical appraisal, we used the Cosmic Numeric methods checklist, and for data extraction, we used the standardized numeric forms. For you who are not familiarized with the SOM table, basically we have in the rows each study, and in each column the measurement properties. In our specific case, truth and visibility were already performed by the group, and so we focused on truth based in construct validity and also trial discrimination, test-retest reliability, and ratios of mean. Basically, the good methods check by Cosmic Numeric is similar to the risk of bias assessment in the systematic review. The difference that the outcome of this appraisal is that whether we will use or not the evidence. If we rate it a good methods, we use the evidence, and if we have a number, it would be rated as we can use the evidence with some cautions. And if the methodology is not appropriate, we won't use it to create evidence. All results we are presenting today, they are preliminary. So these are the 18 papers that we found relevant to our study. In this first table, there are 10, which are the longitudinal observational papers. Next, we found 2 papers which were RCTs, but not based on pharmacological interventions, and also 5 which were based on pharmacological interventions, and they had information on trial discrimination, and the previous ones more based in construct validity, as we'll see. So one question, which measurement properties were assessed? Basically, we found the properties which were more represented in our studies. We had 10 studies which covered construct validity, and 7 studies that covered clinical trial discrimination. The other properties, we had lower papers. We are also appraising the quality of them. We'll show the SOM table by the end. So as a result, we had more evidence on construct validity and trial discrimination. And now we'll discuss these 2 properties with further detail.
Yes, so first, it's time for some discussion about constructability. I'll briefly introduce the concept for those who are not familiar with it, just so we're all on the same page. And then we're going to have some discussions in groups on concepts that might be relevant in the context of the presentism and WO25 as an example. So, a construct, on top you see the definition, and basically perhaps a simpler definition would be is the what that is being measured. And examples could be, for example, pain, quality of life, or an out situation that is presented. Now moving on from the construct, so the what is being measured, to the construct validity, again, another definition, and basically what you want to know in terms of construct validity is the degree to which the instrument truly measures the construct it purports to measure. So in our case, the WO25 aims to measure presentism, so we want to know to what degree does it actually measure this. And you can see the second bullet, and especially the blue text, there are several ways to assess constructability. On the one hand, you can see to what extent your instrument, in our case WO25, relates to other measures that might be similar or not similar. And you can also look at different proofs with certain expectations. And basically it has to do with truth, almost, to what extent these numeric scores make sense. And when you are comparing with the other instruments or other constructs, here are some examples. For example, you can imagine if you are comparing your instrument with another instrument that is assessing the same domain or a very similar one, you would expect these scores also to be related. For example, on top, if you have an instrument that measures this specific pain, another one that measures generic pain, these are kind of similar constructs, so you would expect these to be related also as scores. On the other hand, the second bullet, the second example, if you have one instrument measuring physical function, another one is measuring mental health, there might be some relation, but not very strong, you would expect. So this is really about what the construct of interest is, but also about what it is not. And also so what your instrument is purporting to measure, and also about what it is not purporting to measure. That being said, typically this is being done with correlations. So basically, you check whether the scores of your instrument interest and the scores of another instrument, whether they follow a certain, a certain strength based on what you would expect. And it can be a positive correlation, so if the scores on one instrument are higher, they're also higher on the other instrument, or it can be negative, higher on one instrument, lower on the other one, or there can be no correlation at all, if you think that there should be no relation. And typically, you're working with hypotheses in this regard. So, and some of you will know this, if you assess constructability, you make hypotheses beforehand of what kind of relations you expect. So if you're looking at the WO25 for presentism, and you say, let's compare it with pain, as an example, a pain questionnaire, then before you do your study, you typically make a hypothesis saying, well, there might be some relation, not too strong, so we expect to see this. So you define it and then you check it once you've done your study. Of course, this is very challenging because it makes you wonder what kind of domains and concepts should you use for comparison. Secondly, also, what kind of hypothesis do you make? What kind of results do you expect? And today we're focusing on the first one. So what kind of domains and concepts should be used for comparison? And now, our activity, moving to the WO25 specifically. So please remember this instrument that you just also filled in aims to measure your limitations, your presentism limitations in your productivity while at work. And so the question one make you think about and also discuss about is what kind of construct should we use to evaluate the constructability of WO25. So then think about what kind of concepts would you expect to be similar, related to presentism, but also not similar, not related to presentism. And that makes you also makes you think, what should the WO25, what should it measure, what should it not measure? The second question, and later we will show all of them, so you can still see them. Second one is then once you've thought about all these different constructs that could be relevant, which one might be most relevant or most convincing. So if we want in the end, if we want to be able to say WRQ25 is a good instrument, what kind of evidence do we want to see? Which constructs should we have seen for comparison? And third, once we've done that, should we establish a kind of minimum set of constructs, like set a list of constructs of which we think like, okay, for us to be convinced that the constructability of this instrument is good, it should have at least been compared with construct A, construct B, construct C. If that's not the case, then we don't accept the evidence as being adequate, even though the methods might be good. Now, with that being said, here are again 3 questions. Now, time for some discussion in groups. Given the number of people, I suggest we do this in 3 tables, 3 groups. You were there as moderator. And also, I ask you to mingle a bit because I see people with similar backgrounds or roles sitting together. So I ask you if you could switch around a bit.
Can I ask the instrument, does it deliver a simple numerical score and practice or?
Yes, we're focusing today on that index score, the weighted average of the 4 different.
Yes.
Oh, thanks. So the question was, is there a single score from this questionnaire? Yeah, which are focusing on the index score, the weighted average.
Is more weight applied to certain items than others?
Certain domains, yes, and I'm happy to get that for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which ones are higher or lower?
We usually just do peer.
Online, if you wanted to participate in the discussion, you could do so in this. You can discuss amongst yourselves, these answering questions. You know, follow. In your groups, if you could, at your tables, maybe just take a minute to introduce yourselves and your roles. Okay.
Say. Just writing. Type on this thing. What kind of constructs? Some potential constructs might be. Should I give some of my examples? Able to meet deadlines. Working for huge functions over and Some last questions kind of like mindfulness construct. Oh. Dana has experience with doing this. She did this for my myositis group. Yeah. Oh no, she just said that. Yeah. Maybe. You've mentioned other instruments. Good measures of productivity. Only a few questions at the end. People just concentrate.
We don't know, because on the CS, it data so far. The text was very hard, so this is very hard. But it is not to, yeah, even though what productivity, I don't know whether is there any trade or potential capture. Particularly, just moving forward, CS is going to be more prominent, that's what it is. And in the trials, because it's just with joints, you might not want to try to say, so we need to come up with some form of duty.
Yes.
We need to find something to measure. What is this review?
Do you think that the physical functioning questionnaire might be constant? Different. Oh, doing the type of work, physical trauma. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how you go about talking about it.
What's the timing for this? Yeah. Do all three questions or just the first question? So her question, Dana sent the thing. Can't figure out how to scroll up on this thing. There we go. This is where the mental productive worker may be a mindful worker. Oh, I'm worried if I go here, I'll get lost. Oh, I passed mindfulness questionnaire, and I'm waiting. But how would that fit? Because it's, how would this fit? Sorry, just it's the whole questionnaire, right? You score the thing that's at the end as a whole. So you can't just do a certain portion of it, can you? It's a tough composite, man. Yeah. Doesn't apply. At this point, it really depends on the job. So they couldn't use this for the full job or anything. As a construct. The mind can be distracted all they want. Get the job done and say a researcher. Can't concentrate. It's physically okay. Oh, I see. We had a chat with the group, which I'll update with you.
So we just, for sake of time, we've got breakout sessions as well. So it's good to see that there's definitely some discussion. We had this good discussion about the instrument itself and also about some of the constructs. So we do a really quick wrap up, but we all make notes, and so we use that to have some further discussions within the work productivity group as well. So maybe Casper, you may want to give a brief update on what your take on this discussed.
Very briefly, some discussion. First of all, was mentioned that performance of the instruments is always conventional. So I want to see performances that the other problems will be better, problems with the teams, other organs might influence the relation between health and activity. At the time of work was made, and then there were health issues that were more physical and more mental, especially the mental health issues, attention, brain fog, pain, concentration, but also stress independence of the causal relation, the availability because to be working for the express or your way home, it has pride, work satisfaction. Correlation with scoring challenge and with disease activity was mentioned, and that we likely do not have a very good measure to measure through probability loss. And finally, health-related quality of life, the mental aspects, the physical aspects of health-related quality of life should have some relation. The last measure was a comment that perhaps the skills of the daily view, that was more emphasis on physical work, while nobody is focusing on mentally.
Thank you very much. Humphrey,
Interesting ways. First, we thought the ways are the three features. Engagement with work, engagement with work. Also, worker perception of disability, fear of job loss, empathy of colleagues, social support, basic leave, hard times on time, failure to method collaborators service, pain, additional investment, which involves money, time, and also emotional investment, dependence, motivation, self-esteem, job satisfaction, family support, and also family understanding, victimizing, how I respond on family's beliefs, and also missing work, absenteeism, also absentee. Question 2 and 3 illustrate these 4 domains: financial, emotional, social support, and physical.
Thank you very much. I have to say, I am so impressed. I was writing like that to keep up, and he's doing it on his phone. Well, Captain, you can do better. So, another table, which actually was a table full of researchers. We've got some bit of a discussion because there were some issues with just general with the question of how they were asked, some of the content of the questions, and ability, difficulty as well, with questions as well. So when thinking about construct validity and physical function was definitely the first that came up. There was also the Lindenhoven scale that was measured, looking at task performance, work behavior, culture productivity, other presentation scales, and in general, both multi-item and global measures, mental health. But we also came up with the financial sort of salary as a construct validity. But then the discussion became, what about sort of self-employed? So the perspective might be slightly different if you start thinking about salary as a construct validity. Do we need a minimum one? And I think the jury is still not out on that one. And one reasoning was that because there are 4 subdomains, we should have at least a minimum 2 to 4 sort of construct validities to measure that. And then we briefly also discussed, do we need to have construct validity for the different soft skills as well. Any discussions on the?
We covered most of, yeah, thank you. We covered a lot of that you just reported back, and specifically for one of the last subdomains with the mental aspect, maybe like a construct about mindfulness, and mindfulness questionnaire was posted, which could be interesting. Yeah, so that might be an interesting one. And then, but the type of job is we talked about how this might be quite biased towards a physical type of job.
Yeah, that was also the problem because in the question they talk about emotional as physical, and so how can you differentiate what is? So that's brilliant. That's really good feedback. And so we now sort of coming to the next thing. What actually did you find? And is there maybe something that we need to do in the future, thinking about all these constructs that you came up with? So Pascal, Andre will talk about the next. Yep.
So in the literature, what we found that the WRQ had meaningful correlation with the constructing group. So the health-oriented ones, disability, severity of arthritis, pain, and quality of life. And work-oriented, work productivity, impact of health on work problems, ability to work, difficulty doing work, and satisfaction in work with work performance. The constructs in gray, the evidence was not so good because many times the hypotheses were not stated previously. And also we had a few papers, they are still in other investigations, so fatigue, anxiety, depression, vulnerabilities, and also workload, earnings, and educational. So moving back to our soft table regarding construct validity, from the 10 papers we found, 8 are available for synthesis.
Thank you for this input. And now we can move to the second challenge that we encountered when appraising the WLQ's measurement properties. And Casper already announced it. It was the measurement property called trial discrimination. And trial discrimination is all about how well an instrument is able to perform in clinical trial setting, or business actually clinical trials,
and was specifically defined as the ability of the instrument to detect differences between the two treatment arms. So we move from observational studies to experimental studies. A randomized controlled trial in this case, people are randomized into two groups. One group receives the intervention, the control group receives not intervention or no intervention, usual care, and we check in this case whether or not there is improvement in the WRQ. You can test the difference between the groups by a t-test, for example. T-test only gives you a level of certainty that you assess the truth, but you also want to have an effect size, how large is the effect. And this is calculated by an effect size. It looks at the differences, the change over the course of the trial between the two groups, and accounts also for the level of overlap. Is the level of overlap is very large in relation to that true difference, absolute difference, then you have a small effect size. And if the overlap is reasonably small, then you have a large effect. On what already defined, to know whether the instrument fulfills the items that should be fulfilled for a good measure, already defines what should be meant. They say you should first look at the time interval between the intervention and the assessment of your outcome. If your outcome is very distant, the number of surgeries when you start a biological, then the time frame is much longer than when you assess the effect of a biological or disease activity. So the time frame to detect change is important. And then, of course, you also should check within that study the proportion of persons that you expect to change in one of both groups is present. It has all to do with the trial. You want that your trial is effective, otherwise you will not see any effect of the WRQ between the two arms to the effectiveness of the intervention. And then you should formulate again hypothesis, about hypothesis, about the anticipated differences in the change scores. Do you expect within this time frame and this intervention large positive effect and negative effect? It can be large or small. And finally, the statistical method, we are not going to go back on this. You have different approaches to measure effectiveness. There are other aspects of a good method, and they are distinguished in the gold, the silver, and the bronze standard, depending on whether you have a randomized clinical trial, unrandomized clinical trial, or a single arm trial. Because in our search, we found sufficient randomized clinical trial. We are going to check whether we get pluses towards our good methods check. And in the gold standard, they say it is about the fact that the candidate instrument, LQ, is placed in the randomized clinical trials where other validated instruments measuring the same domain are also completed. And this setting, the randomized control trial, lets the external other domain instrument or domain of the same instrument, other instrument of the same domain, allow you to have the advantage of a trial. You have less bias. You can check still the effect compared to the other group, but an external standard to measure of the same domain provides you also knowledge of the true effect of the intervention. You can check whether the intervention really works because you have that other instrument that was valid that shows change, and you can use that as a benchmark to check that certificate to change and trial discrimination of your study. So far, at the background of the handbook, we are just reading what you can read. And with Kasper and André already mentioned that we found 7 studies for clinical trial discrimination. All but one were randomized controlled trials, one was observational intervention, and one was excluded because it was not fit for further analysis. And then what we found interesting was 2 studies were pharmacological interventions, and one received a green rating, but 4 of them were drug intervention trials, so the classic drug intervention trials of the biological DMARDs. and 3 of them did not receive a green label. So that was a little bit strange. So we want to discuss now with you, and this is our activity, what in the good methods check do we miss to give the RCTs on drugs, biological DMARCs, a green label, a good methods label. Let's go back to the good methods. So first, we should decide that the trial drugs, we had trials with polygamol and trials with other biological drugs, that we expect a change in the WLQ. And I think we can check this because we just discussed there is some relationship with improving health. If you improve your health, you improve your presenteeism. So check, we don't discuss this anymore. The second was, is there an appropriate time frame in the trials that we found? Yes, the time frame seems appropriate because there is a direct relation between how your health is and how your presenteeism is. So we also checked, we don't need to discuss this. But then we were struggling, and here we need your input, with the hypothesis that we should measure in a trial an instrument that possesses the same domain as a benchmark to see was the trial really effective, and can we decide then that our new measure that we check has approximately the same effect size, and yes, this is a good measure. However, in most of the trials, we did not have another construct that measures also presenteeism or work productivity or whatever. So that's why it dropped off, and we could not give it a green label but an amber label. So we would like to discuss a little bit what you think about it. Is it absolutely necessary that you should have another measure from the same domain, and that's our point, from the same domain to be able to give it a green label, specifically in our case? We just wanted to have an open discussion because we don't have so much time. Okay, and hello persons online, but you can give your opinion in the chat, and you can answer the question, do you feel it is necessary, and or do you feel that there might be other domains and other domains instruments where you say if this changes, and we come back actually to what we discussed in construct validity, if this changes, then I'm convinced that the trial is effective, and then I think we should go and use the effect size of WLQ in your. So
Anybody, so focusing on that first aspect. Yep, just bring the microphone.
So I guess for context session, through the genetic sciences, pharmaceutical perspective, I think the concepts that are typically measured, the domains that are typically measured in 4 ways, in clinical trials, typically in the ones that are higher in the endpoint hierarchy, primary. The challenge with something like work productivity is that it's not very common that you will see it as a major secondary endpoint, which would mean that the odds of it being like the domain being measured related to work productivity in multiple ways. So one of the child is not including I think perhaps should it not be given the green label, I think that there will be a lot of instances where there'll be a chance that the green label won't be given if that criteria. So I would say it would be good to perhaps come up with another marker of what else could be there. to see how else to describe it.
Thank you. Because the alternative is that we perhaps should design new studies and add other questionnaires and then new RCTs. So it's a challenge in balancing the benefits.
I think that's a very interesting point that you raised, and it just has me thinking whether you have like different mechanisms, if it's a primary outcome versus it's not a primary outcome. So if you choose disease as a primary outcome, then maybe you're striving for the. And I also wondered what is respondent burden or the participant burden is considered. I don't have much experience with taking now, but if you push the goal standard towards having high burden for the participant and so on, because there is the work that goes into actual validating the instrument already. So one would always go back to validation literature to see the domain that correlate. Why would we implement the same thing twice? It's start from the same domain. Yeah, it's sort of kind of not necessary.
I think that's a good suggestion. Check where the high correlation of WLQ is with another domain, and if that's often collected in trials, then it will be okay.
Foundation of three instruments. I think first, the original paper, they already made some tests in relation with other domains. Literature from source of validation. It's pretty important.
Really good points. And then the other thing I can think about is that some of the early correlations would be around states, around single points in time correlation between a certain state and another. And now we're talking about changing states. We're more measuring error around measuring change. And some things might change, and other things might change in a different way. So the same principle could be held. We have to just change our language to around, is it going to change in the same direction as the other concepts changing in the context of health? And then we've always got to compare treatment and placebo. It's kind of a challenging feature.
I just want to try a different perspective. I think this new which also is that we capture how also fully at work following X treatment or not. And this is something that has not been mentioned well before, because we mentioned other domains. And I just wonder whether, because I think it would, of course, not get wrong this because it's easier. In terms of what I think is that job with high quality field, job with high physical load. So I think that interesting lab is fantastic for cognitive work, and then they just miss 1 or 2 days a year or 4 days a year into the computer. That's fantastic. Whereas an injection in the state, it's just add more cognitive. So I just wonder whether that would be captured in this and create more and more. Because I think what we have now is, okay, this drug is good for this because biology, but actually in the real world, you have sort of maybe office worker and physical worker is so beautiful. And we want to know who does well in what context. Obviously, we have to something a little bit more. I think whether you should capture that, I don't know what. I don't know, but to make it a local and new outcome measure, because no one else, no one is doing this So within this take time measurement. Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts? We move to the second question.
I start thinking, I want to share a thought, and that everyone should adapt the contextual factor group, because we discuss so much contextual factors, whether a trial has different impact on workers and non-workers, and the same is for high and low BMI, and male and female, and worker productivity in physical and non-physical work. So it occurs to me that this time in what we discuss very much the context of subgroups of patients much more than we ever did before. That's well, thank you, everyone. The second issue is actually already raised, and it is a challenge that we saw that pharmacological studies, trials that had the WLQ, that the WLQ was actually always the secondary outcome. So we had another issue with the Prometheus check, that there was not a clear hypothesis raised. And then we thought, perhaps if the authors say our trial is a superiority trial, then we might assume that the intervention is better. Yes, is better, definitely on the primary outcome, but also on all secondary outcomes. Can we assume that if the instrument that we have, and we talk about the WLQ as an example, it's the same for fatigue and health-related quality of life, and lots of other secondary outcome measures that we are going to validate and have to prove trial discrimination. Can we accept in a trial without clearly stating what the hypothesis was for the secondary outcomes? Can we use these trials to see whether the instrument has trial discrimination? Should we be strict, or should we be less strict?
We really want something we need to be able to pass it. For other reasons.
Being able to use the good methods check to assess whether the ability of people has good measurement. Definitely trial, it is not specifically stated, but we have thought that it was hypothesized that it also improved whether how to reach the quality of life or make a single specific do we think that it's just that we want, or should we
I would imagine that what the analysis would be anyway. Specifically, I suspect hypothesis that he's the statement based on in what we are at the so I suppose that in itself one wouldn't hypothesize that the intervention would perform better. So we could somehow dictate that, or perhaps it's also an indication.
Reporting.
Yes, because we look at it's a secondary outcome. Sometimes exploratory outcomes are not all listed in the protocol. Sometimes yes, it can, but it's a secondary outcome. It would be a protocol. Also, has to be a patient but I think the stringency of measuring multiple ways, it all largely depends on the measuring for in correlations with other measurements that are very important to patients, whether it's physical function or whether it's healthcare quality of life,
I think they will be in that, so not space. I also think that they were saying that we have so I would just not let it go there. Yes, well, this is the primary arguments. The questions formulated is different say instruments measurements then you are asking why this instrument it's no theory. As I am perspective, this instrument is correlated in some way with the data. So even if I know it doesn't formulate it on secondary, I think it's correlated with solutions.
So that we as reviewers put that hypothesis on to the literature.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody else with some thoughts on this topic, because I'm not quite sure within your working group if you have experienced something quite similar where some of the outcomes you use are also of secondary outcomes. And when it's already at that stage of some of the no. So that draws us to the end of this SIG. And so really would like to thank everybody for coming along and participating. This has been really helpful for us and some sort of thought-provoking answers and questions as well. So we will definitely need to go back and think how we're going to proceed with some of the suggestions you made. And I guess that will also inform OpenRect as well. It always seems very simple if you read things, but this is how you need to do it. But when you want to actually sort of principally replacing some of the literature, you go in all these kind of problems. And also quite often, because sometimes the manuscripts nowadays, not a lot of information can be included, it's completely words come, and then you might want to go back to the protocols. But also we had some good discussions about construct validity. And it's interesting to hear there was some overlap with the construct validity, that was fun. But there were a couple of items that were not covered. So we need to think, is this maybe something we need to include in future studies as well? So if there are no further questions, enjoy the rest of your OpenRect. And we always open to anybody who would like to join our worker productivity group. And like Andries said, definitely contextual factors will also cover some of the aspects which came up today quite a lot. So I think that's a fun day. But thank you very much for coming. And now you can enjoy your dinner as well. And also thank you very much on the people online. They find as well. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.